This meeting is being recorded.
All right. This meeting is being conducted utilizing teleconferencing and electronic means consistent with State of California executive orders regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. Zoom is being utilized for this meeting. In case of technical issues, meetings will be uploaded to the city website as soon as possible after the meeting. We will be conducting today's meeting in a virtual setting using Zoom. Committee members and staff are participating from remote locations, practicing appropriate social distancing. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting by use of Zoom as noted on the city's website and as noted on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to speak to the Climate Action Committee may do so during public comment or make comment on agenda items during the discussion of each item and must be logged into Zoom. Anyone using abusive, vulgar, offensive, threatening, or harassing language, personal attacks of any kind, or offensive terms that target specific individuals or groups will be muted and removed from the meeting. Please do not abuse this new way to provide public comment. So looking, it looks like we have a quorum present, but we will turn it over for roll call to Carrie.
Thank you. Sorry, I need to find the roster and my mute button both at the same time. Okay, let's see. For the roll call, Jerry Glazer.
It's me.
Sonali Sikand. I do not see Sonali yet. Woody Hastings.
I'm here.
Thank you. Argus Brent.
Present.
Thank you. Ambrosia Thompson. Everett Fernandez did let me know he's could not be here tonight. Sarah Gurney.
Here.
Thank you. Diana Rich. I do not see Diana yet. Alex Goodman. Don't see Alex. Dina Allen.
Yes.
Joshua Somane.
Yep, here, thank you.
Thank you. Kenna Lee.
Here.
Lisa Pierce.
Here.
And Debbie Burns.
Here.
Okay, so you do have a quorum.
Perfect. Joshua, do we have a review of action items?
Yeah, I can do that. Let's see. People were encouraged to check out the Woodmark housing proposal for Sebastopol, review the reach codes subject for potential approval at today's meeting, submit any public comments for the framework draft, and review the proposed list of duties for the committee. So I believe all of those subjects will be up today.
Thank you. Do we have any comments from the public regarding items not on the agenda today? I do not see anyone asking to speak. So we will move on to statements of conflicts of interest by anyone on the committee. Does anyone have a statement of conflict of interest regarding any of today's agenda items? Wave your arms or raise your hand. I see none. We'll move on to the planning department report.
Thank you, Kenna. I will keep it brief because I know we have a packed agenda, but the council did adopt the fiscal year budget as well as the capital improvement plan the last Tuesday at their meeting. And so that I believe that did include the grant writer. Yes, Sarah, thank you, Sarah. I'm a little tired from last night's planning commission meetings. I'm just making sure here, as well as obviously the finalization of the Civic Spark Fellow and a smaller amount of funding for the climate action projects that may be proposed. And if you recall, the thought was it is a line in the budget now. There is some amount, a few thousand for that. But if there are larger initiatives, as we go through prioritizing the climate action framework projects, it's there, and council can always make an amendment either as part of approving a work plan or a project going forward or as part of the mid-year budget. The capital improvement plan was also approved. And last night at the Planning Commission, Phoebe did a great job of presenting the climate action framework draft to the Planning Commission, which does include Everett and Debbie Burns, who Debbie's here today. Everett was not, but they did unanimously adopt a resolution recommending that be adopted by council at the next city council meeting, and that is scheduled for next Tuesday. And so you may see me taking notes during the meeting because technically that report was due yesterday, but I asked Mary, our city clerk, for good graces because we had votes going on last night and today. And so I need to get that to her as the climate action finishes up any actions on that item. And I think those are the big things that have happened in the past couple of weeks. A couple of community celebrations to mark your calendar for, though. One is July 20th, which is next Wednesday. The library will be hosting, kind of co-hosting with the city, although they're definitely, I will give them all the credit for the hosting of an opening celebration at 6 p.m. with Michael McGinnis, the artist for Gray Matters, which is installed at the front of the library. That is the city's second commissioned art piece, but first to be completed. And so that's an exciting piece for the city's public art committee. And then on Saturday at 1 o'clock in Ives Park, we'll be doing a ribbon cutting and opening for the Ives Park Sculpture Garden. There have been a couple more sculptures installed as of Tuesday, and the final 2 or 3 will be installed next Tuesday, and signage going up next week. And one of those sculptures is by your very own co-chair, Joshua Somane. So definitely on Saturday at 1, it's going to be a great celebration. There's going to be the Santa Rosa Youth Chamber Orchestra. The Sebastopol Center for the Arts is also having an art sale at the back of their parking lot. So the parking lot will be closed for the art center, but there's a city parking lot across the street. And of course, up by the library, a short walk away, or bicycle parking throughout. So definitely come and join us for that.
Thank you so much.
And I see a question, will the grant writing services go out for request for proposal? I don't know if that's known yet or not. I think I'll probably be having discussions with the city manager on that. If it's, it could go one of two ways. One could be a single consultant, and the other way would be if there are grants that we know we want to go after and there's a specialist in that, then it could be, that the specialist for that grant is hired for that, and that grant for that. So literally adopted 7 days ago, we still have to work out the details of that. So more to come, Steve. But if you do know anyone who would be good and interested that we should contact for this, definitely you can go ahead and send me their names or names and contact info.
And working groups can be actively looking for, identifying grants we'd like written and people that we think might do a good job writing them at this.
Yep. Yeah, we do have that in the budget in terms of moving forward with that.
Perfect. All right. Sarah, do you have a very speedy report on city council? So
I can be speedy. I just want to add a couple of things that Carrie didn't mention. First, in the budget, we added one police officer, sworn police officer at the beginning step level, which I think is called A. We also moved $150,000 from the Facilities and Infrastructure Reserve into the capital improvements program for street rehab. And that's according to the goals that the city set maybe 5 years ago that we haven't been following, but that's important to work up our account for that. Also, there's an additional celebration, I believe, that will piggyback on the opening of the sculpture garden, and that is a photo exhibit in the Center for the Arts dining room related to the relaunch photo contest for Sebastopol. It has a very catchy name, which I can't think of right now. Maybe Carrie's got it, and I'm anticipating it might be right after the sculpture garden launch event or right before. in any event, that's another fun one. Photos that our people have taken of our community. That's it.
Great, thank you so much. So we will dive right into our regular agenda. We have a continued item about our climate action framework, which was a motion that was seconded to recommend the adoption of the climate action framework by City Council. Jerry, go ahead.
Well, I knew we were bringing this back up again. I'd like to make an amendment to it, as long as Joshua is okay with the amendment. With these changes would be the end of that. They adopted with these changes. One is that numbering be included for each one of the clauses, and that the focus for vehicles, which was electric vehicles, whatever, there was discussion last time about how that should be worded. And the focus really is to focus away from non-renewably fueled single-person vehicles, or something like that. Some set of phrases. I don't know if Phoebe thought about that in the meantime. It has some wording to go along with it. Hey, Joshua, are you okay with that?
Great. Go ahead, Phoebe.
Yeah, thanks, Kenna. I just wanted to give a quick update on the changes that have been made since the last meeting. So there were some changes made to those transportation goals to reflect that we want to be prioritizing active transportation and not necessarily public transportation over electric vehicles. And so there's changes to the transportation goal. These are all highlighted in the version of the framework that was included in the materials for this meeting. So that transportation goal was changed on page 15. There's a similar change to reflect that on page 18 of the EV subsection. There's a couple actions added in Appendix A based on some feedback on page A7, A20, and A21. This version also includes Appendix C, which is the summary of community engagement materials. And then I'll just go over a couple public comments and other feedback I've gotten, because I'll be looking.
Can you, for just a second, does anybody need us to do like a share screen of those changed language portions, or has everybody had a chance to review those?
The answer is no, and I was about to ask that question. Yes, it would be great if those particular clauses could be read.
Sure.
Thank you, Phoebe.
Okay, so this is looking at the transportation section. The first goal was the one that was discussed at the last committee meeting. So instead of saying prioritize active and public transportation, it now just says prioritize active transportation in transportation planning. And then down below, there was this another piece that was at issue. And this used to say something about prioritizing active and public transportation modes. Now it's just a sort of statement of fact that those two transportation modes help reduce emissions, but they're not always feasible. And that's when an electric vehicle is a good emission reduction method.
That's a little confusing to me, because I didn't think the discussion was about eliminating public transportation, but focusing on active transportation. There's no reason why we can't focus on public transportation as well.
That was the feedback that was received.
It's still there, Jerry. It's just not prioritized in the same way, but it's still all there.
All right.
So does anyone have more, any of the members have any more comments or discussion about the motion on the table that we recommend, that send a recommendation to City Council that they, yes, go ahead, Joshua.
Just on the editing process front, I know Phoebe ran into this point where we got public feedback, including my own, up until July 7th, but that those changes can't necessarily be approved without essentially the approval of this committee or some public body in that way. So I think there's a couple other potential edits for inclusion, which we might want to reflect on before formally recognizing this. Phoebe can speak better to this subject than I can. Just playing catch up on that a little bit.
Yeah, Kenna, would it be okay if I went over a couple of the other comments I've received?
Please,
Okay.
please lead the discussion. I can be quiet.
Yeah, so just to go over some of those comments and then ask for direction from the committee. The public comments, there are 3, those were included in the meeting materials, and they're also summarized in Appendix C. There were suggestions in those comments around adding an action to provide rainwater catchment instruction classes to residents, expressing support for a compost facility located within Sonoma County, increasing the emphasis on transitioning away from personal vehicles, including by increasing safety and connectivity of bike and ped infrastructure, adding a priority for a rail connection between Sebastopol and Santa Rosa, and adding an action to survey residents about their attitudes and behaviors related to climate change to better predict greenhouse gas emission reductions and understand barriers to personal actions. And there were also some comments from the Planning Commission last night about switching from level of service to VMT reduction, again, about prioritizing pedestrian safety and connectivity, education of residents, and also continuing advocacy to encourage state action on electrification. And then I did also receive some comments from Joshua. And Joshua, did you want to summarize the ones you felt were sort of most important to bring up with the group?
Sure, thank you. I mean, some of it was just sort of, organizational details in the document. One thing that I did want to call out in the, building use take action section, I believe, there was a take action for residents little box saying install a rain barrel. And my position as a landscape architect and site developer is that 50 gallons of storage is essentially meaningless. And that so putting one little barrel just doesn't accomplish anything. So just suggesting changing the verbiage there to install rainwater tanks, it opens it up for larger volumes, and potentially also install rain gardens and or bioswales to harvest rainwater. Just both of those allow for a larger volume sequestration on site, which I think is just a more meaningful suggestion for homeowners. There were a couple other ones related to the fact that the town is not an island, that Sebastopol has a relationship not just to unincorporated Sebastopol addresses, but also to West County towns, and also to dairies and ranches and farms within the Laguna area. So a couple of suggestions for actions on that front would be to sort of do partnerships with West County towns such as Occidental, Brayton, Forestville, where people routinely drive to Sebastopol to do their services. That if we sort of help those towns also promote electrification of vehicles, help them get more EV chargers installed in those unincorporated towns or hamlets, that would be a nice gesture. Similarly, on the front of dairy ranches in the Laguna, suggesting the possibility of essentially broad-scale compost application partnerships with those dairies, because if those dairies flood, then downtown floods also. So if we can increase potential sequestration on sort of a watershed, local neighborhood hydrology. So those are sort of the only ones that I think of as important.
Great, thank you, Joshua. So that's sort of the feedback I've received that has not been incorporated into the framework to date, and would welcome your thoughts on that. Do you want me to call on people?
Yeah, please.
Okay, Woody, go ahead.
Thanks, and thanks for all the good work. There was I did read the comment letters, and one of them pointed to the inadequacy of the sort of painted bike lanes, and wanting to have more separated bike lanes and bike paths and whatnot. And I didn't hear you mention that one when you were listing them, so just wondering if that's something that would also be in this on this list of potential inclusion.
Yeah, I did mention the comment about increasing emphasis on safety and connectivity of bike ped infrastructure, and that's actually already in the framework, and it states that pretty clearly. So, Jerry.
Just to comment on the one input about trains or rail. I would object to that being included. And actually at the MTC Policy Advisory Council too, there's been talk because a number of the funding plans were based around dedication. That is, you can get funding if you have dedicated service. So it would either be light rail or BRT. What really needs to be done is it has to be some form of transportation. They hit the right note, but they said one specific way to do it. It ought to be transportation which has a guaranteed life. And BRT does because of the infrastructure that's put in place. Light rail does because of the infrastructure put in place. But you can also do it by contract. You can also do it by dedicating lanes. You can do it by a number of things. And at the MTC, they're looking at how they can change the wording as well. So we ought not have rail in there. It would be a dedicated, guaranteed service over time. Because changing bus routes happens all the time. But if you have a contract that says this bus route must be here, it's got to be here for 15 years, that would do the same thing.
Thank you, Jerry. Lisa?
Yeah, I think there's a few ideas in Appendix A that I think a number of us would probably question. It seems like that's sort of just a landing place for all sorts of community ideas and not necessarily recommendations that come from our committee, as I understand it. But anyway, I'm comfortable with the way the language was changed for the prioritizing of public transportation. I think that worked out really well. And the only other thing that I would add, and we touched on this last time, was some kind of acknowledgement. There's a bit of a feeling that if we just do these things, that we're going to be okay, and we have an extremely ambitious target as a city. That you know, it's a bit often kind of fantasy land, maybe, in terms of what we can actually accomplish. Unfortunately, and that's the way I see it anyway. And just some kind of acknowledgement in the beginning that we do have a very long way to go, and that we haven't really made a whole lot of progress since, perhaps so far. I mean, we've made some progress for sure, but in terms of our levels of emissions, we haven't made a whole bunch of improvements. So I don't know how that would be done. Steve, you had something about that, right? That you were suggesting. Are you there?
I was hoping you had the wording, but guess not.
Oh. Well, I think we wrote it to you, Phoebe, a while back, just that something about, while we acknowledge that much has been done, that we still have a very long way to go in terms of reaching our goals. It might have been just something like that.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Jerry, did you have another comment?
Yeah, just coming back to Lisa's comment about the action list, I have to admit something, that in reading the framework, the part I cared about was the framework and not the action list. And I sent to Phoebe and Carrie a recommendation that we change the name of the action list to something else. I saw another city did this. We can call it the action playbook. That is, these are the kinds of things that can be considered. They're the ones that we definitely want to do. Are they appropriate today? Are they appropriate tomorrow? Not necessarily. Just like in any sport, you have a list of plays that you could use, but you don't use them all. And you select them based on the circumstances that you have. And I think that softens that list. The list is one that Phoebe probably got from a number of places, a number of people. So somebody thought those actions were good actions. We might not, but it's a playbook. And I think if we just place it that way, it's a good document that with a starting place for us to argue about those.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry. And Carrie and I did discuss that title change. However, we felt that the way it's written, it's fairly clear that those actions are not being committed to by the city in any sense. So we felt that keeping it as actions for future considerations was appropriate. However, if the committee has a different direction to take, please let us know. Sarah, do you have another comment?
I'm going to add to that one. I happen to like the word action items because I think it appeals to people who, in their despondency and depression about the situation that Lisa was speaking to, where we're trying and we still have a lot to do. Action is a really, I think, well, active word. So I like it much better than a sports analogy, Jerry. I'm sorry. Your playbook doesn't do it for me. Also, I want to check on the next steps. I believe Carrie mentioned this last time. This group gets to put together its work plan as its next project. So this group can prioritize what it thinks are the most important tasks, that order that it can then submit to the council. I also wanted to share with this group very quickly, when Phoebe went through her presentation at the RCPA, she was very positively received. In fact, the unanimous position of the group was, we want to keep Phoebe in Sonoma County. We need to find her a job. She's wonderful. And a number of people in other cities now want their Civic Spark Fellow. So Phoebe, you have led the way very professionally for whoever follows you wherever they do. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. Joshua?
Thanks. So Phoebe, if I understand the process right, you sort of need us to sign off on these edits for inclusion in the final draft. But if we don't have any objections, then you're free to make the edits, and that's the version that would be adopted by Council and Planning Commission. Is that correct?
I believe the motion would need to spell out exactly which edits you're approving. Is that, or correct me if I'm wrong, Carrie?
Well, again, I'm not sure what would be the exact process on this. I would just sort of propose that unless anybody has objections to the things that we've all had a chance to review and discuss here, that we allow you to make the edits we have discussed, and that we're thereby recommending, not this current draft, but the edited draft, as Jerry was suggesting. I don't know if anybody has concerns about that or if that would be out of process, but I personally would like to allow you to move ahead and just, make these changes, which I see as relatively minor, for the sake of inclusion in the final document.
Carrie, can you advise us on process?
Sure.
A lot of nods that it looks like people are in agreement with Joshua.
Sure, I think, we can certainly take the more general direction, and Phoebe can reach out to clarify if she needs. Of course, please recognize we're trying to do a very quick turnaround of by tomorrow at the latest to get these changes incorporated. So I would ask Phoebe if she's clear on the scope of the changes, if it's what she just presented. Yes, you don't need to spell it out in a motion. You can reference per the discussion. And I think the only one that I don't have clarity on is the playbook versus not playbook. I think that Joshua's seemed pretty clear to me, and I'm sure on any others.
Yeah, I'm also unclear exactly which ones the committee wants to move forward with. I think I have Joshua's. And then I heard that it didn't sound like there was any interest in incorporating any of the public comment suggestions. Were there any other?
Well, since I made the motion, let me clarify what the motion says. The motion is that we recommend that the City Council adopt the framework and that it be modified to have numbering, and you've already changed the wording on the transportation. And that's what the motion is on the table. It's not to accept the other changes. The city council could accept those because you put them in the appendix so they know what they are. The numbering, I think, is important because it's a working document and you want to have references that you can point to. Now, our recommendation is that the council adopt the framework and that it be modified to have numbering, and that would be it. But it can be submitted to the council without the numbering with our recommendation that they adopt it with numbering. So that it wouldn't have to be completed with the numbers on it in order for you to bring it to the council. Because then the
What
council would say,
numbering?
yes, we approve that.
What numbering are you asking for, Jerry?
If you look at anything else in a city document, they're numbered. So when you're talking about a goal or some point, you can say, for instance, look at the general plan. The general plan, in fact, in the write-up I did for the REACH code, it lists, here's the goals that the city has, or the policies that the city has, and they all have numbers associated with them. So it's not ambiguous. You're not using a phrase. You're saying number 5.2 or A.1. And that tells them specifically what it is. They can open a document, see it. And this document doesn't have that capability.
The actions are numbered, so you're talking more about the goals and the principles and the
Yes,
law.
because for me, the framework specifically, because this isn't a climate action plan, the actions aren't part of the framework. They're an appendix to the framework. The framework is the first portion. So the first portion needs to be numbered. I'm not worried about the actions. Those numbers can change all the time.
So to clarify, Jerry, are you suggesting that every section in the framework should be numbered, or that the goals in the framework should be numbered?
I think the sections should be numbered, but then the goals would reflect the section that they came from. That's basically how the general plan is done as well.
Okay.
Sarah, that is the way you read these things too, right? It works for you? Yeah.
So Zeno, I see your hand, but Carrie, just point of order here for my understanding. We have a motion on the table. My understanding is there's members of the committee who would like to not adopt, to add the edits that were discussed today. So
Thank you, Kenna. This is, I'm gonna back up a step. Because there was actually a motion and a second made at the last meeting, I believe.
Right. That's what we're talking
about. So that's
about. Yeah.
actually the motion on the table.
Right.
You can then have discussion, and I see we do have public, so you can, you don't have to, but you can call on members of the public again, should you choose to. You don't have to because you've already held public comment at the last meeting. And then you would vote on that motion, unless the maker of that motion wishes to amend it, in which case they can request that, and then the second would need to be amenable to that amendment.
Which I did, and Joshua said yes.
Okay, thank you. That's I have to sort of say it all the way through because I'm not as good at that as Mary is.
So just, I do want to acknowledge our public comment, but I just want us to all be clear that the motion on the table to recommend to the city council that they adopt the climate action framework with added numbering and including the edits that were discussed today.
No, including the edits which were put in as a result of the discussion the last time.
So you're not amending your motion to include the edits that were discussed today with Joshua's feedback.
Right, because they're in the appendix and the document can be amended later on. This way there's no rush for Phoebe to do all of this, and the council can say, hey, those are good ideas. We'd like to have this in the final.
I think I'm just not really understanding why we wouldn't want to just include those now.
I'm not sure we have total agreement on all of them or enough
Yeah.
time to discuss all of them.
Okay.
And whether we send a recommendation, then we spend the time
Yeah.
piecing it apart.
So Zeno, what was your public comment? Thank you for your
it's I'm kind of in my head of being on the transportation working group. So I noticed there was a mistake in page A4. Where there's talk about shared use paths, bike paths, shared use, class 1. So class 1 is not shared use. Class 1 is multi-use path that is shared by pedestrians and bicyclists and is separate from car traffic. So a shared use path is normally is a street that where you share the use between the car traffic and other forms of mobile like bikes and stuff like that. So it's just, I don't know whether you want to change that, but it's a misleading vocabulary.
Thank you, Zeno. Joshua?
Yeah, just as the person who is apparently seconding the motion on the floor, I want to state that my position is more in the camp of let's also adopt the things that we talked about today as edits. And, you know, for expediency, rather than going through and debating the wording on each one, I'm hoping we can, you know, step back a little bit from that level of control and say, we don't have serious concerns about these things and we trust Phoebe to sort of do the right, you know, edit at this point.
So Joshua, can you state that in the form of an amendment to the motion?
The amendment to the motion would simply be that beyond numbering, we also agree that we that the edits to the document would include the points that we have discussed today as parts of the public comment that came in slightly after the last round of approved edits. Again, if anybody has concerns about particular points that were talked about, we can talk about that. If nobody has serious concerns, I would propose that we just let Phoebe make the edits that we have discussed as part of updating the document.
So are you suggesting then all of the comments that she received and changes that were recommended by the public would be included?
My sense was that most of the comments on the public were not super specific, and that some of them were already in alignment with actions and statements that existed in the document. You raised what I would consider an objection about the rail part, which, you know, sounds completely valid to me. So if we're not adopting that, you know, I think it was really a pretty concise list of suggestions there.
So I just want to try and make sure that I know what I'm voting on with my proposal. Phoebe, you have the list. Could you read it back as a list to us of the changes that you would be making?
Sure, I can read the list of the public comment summary again.
Well, yeah, but make it in the form of, I would change it so that we address.
Okay, well, some of them I do feel are already incorporated, so it's not necessarily a change that I would make. It's just a comment that was received. So, for example, adding an action to provide rainwater catchment instruction classes, there's already actions around educating residents about changes. So I feel that that's covered in there, unless it could be added to one of those actions, you know, including rainwater catchment instruction classes to be more specific. The point about expressing support for a compost facility located within Sonoma County, that could possibly be, I'm not sure what the action would be there.
Can you stop for 1 second? I just want, for me, I don't know about the others. I have no objection, by the way, Joshua, on changing any of the actions. It's what would change in the framework from the comments that you've received. And if nothing changes in the framework, but only in the actions, then Joshua, I'll agree.
Yeah, I don't believe there would be any change to the framework.
Okay, then I agree, and we don't have to go through the list unless somebody else wants to.
All right, so are we saying that the motion on the table is to recommend to the city council that they adopt the climate action framework as modified to include numbering within the main body of goals and the modifications as recommended by the CAC at the prior meeting and as discussed in this meeting? Jerry?
Then that's the motion.
Okay. Joshua, are you still seconding this motion? All right. So I believe we can now call for a vote on the motion. So all in favor, please raise your hands in some way, shape, or form.
If you can raise your virtual hand, it makes it a lot easier to count because you all plop to one side of the screen. And it gives me a count at the bottom that says 9 participants have raised their hands. And we have one member, Argus, who does not have his hand raised. So the motion passed. Oh, he's saying he can't raise his hand, but he does. So it is 9. Thank you, Argus. So it is 10 participants. 10. It's a unanimous recommendation.
Are you saying you'll only do virtual meetings going forward because it makes your job easier?
All right. Yay. Congratulations, Climate Action Committee.
Yes,
and
excellent.
Phoebe, for your very excellent work. I'm very proud of all of us for getting through that. But especially Phoebe, we're just so grateful to you. And I would make a bigger deal of it, but we have so much on our plate today that I'm instead going to move straight to item B, our CAC duties. I'm going to do a share screen to review. And Alex, I do see your hand. I don't know if you still have it up from before, but speak up if there's something you want to say. So
sorry. I just had it up accidentally.
That's okay. Can you guys see these duties, or do I need to make them bigger? So we've reviewed this before. I'm hoping to get approval from the committee today to make this a formal proposal at the city council meeting next Tuesday night, that we redefine our duties. This is reworded per the feedback at a previous meeting. So is there any more feedback, or are people ready to move forward with adopting? And unfortunately, I can't share screen and see everybody at the same time. So Joshua, I don't know if you can see, it's kind of hard to see everyone. Let's see.
I can see everybody. What are you looking for?
Okay, I'm looking for any hands or comments, or maybe someone to take a motion.
Oh.
Make a motion to, yes.
We have Sarah Gurney and Woody both have their hands raised.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to take this down so I can see what's going on. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Sarah, go ahead.
Okay, I was going to comment on one of those items. I think there are several mentions in the revised portion in the bottom where you say recommend to the city council. I'd like us to consider also recommending to the planning commission, because it is at the moment of a land use decision that we affect climate. A lot of times those decisions are made without even council consideration, because they are the responsibility of the planning commission. Carrie, does that sound reasonable to you as our planning director?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
We want the planning commission to have that same lens, I think.
So you're saying to just revise the wording to say recommend actions to city council and planning commission.
Yeah, I think that's the easiest rewrite, Kenna.
Okay.
Without it on screen, I don't know exactly, but I think you got it.
I
You
can
have
finish
ideas,
that,
certainly.
but-
Okay. You don't need
Yeah.
to.
Go ahead, Woody.
Thanks. Yeah, just noticing, and pretty late in the game, so sorry, but there's nothing explicitly in there that that says anything about justice or equity. So just wondering if something could be added that says that we look at our policies. I mean, it says climate policies. Maybe adding, within social justice or equity consideration or lens or something.
Thank you, Carrie. So would your recommendation to be to add a fifth bullet point, or to say regarding, or to add to the second one?
It could simply be advised. The third one could say advise city council on meaningful policy options for meeting equity-centered city climate goals, something like that. It could be a simple addition there, or the second one, engage in public education or outreach regarding equity-centered climate issues, or Yeah, something like that. And it could be a fifth bullet, but I'm okay with, would like to see it in there explicitly because it's in the framework, but you have to look into that and it's in the work we do quite
Mhm.
frequently, but it's not in this duties list.
Okay, so I'm adding the words equity centered before city climate goals to bullet point 3.
That satisfies what I'm asking for. Thank you.
Okay. Jerry.
I'd add another bullet, and it's a two-piece to it. The first is that the Climate Action Committee has the responsibility for updating the climate action framework on a regular basis or as needed, and completing the I'm losing the words, but basically one of the things I asked for in the climate action framework in my first edit was, could you tell us what each one of the different committees and council are responsible for? So we have responsibilities identified in the climate action framework. So I think we ought to have a bullet that says that we satisfy the responsibilities assigned to us in the climate action framework. And that allows for the function to change over time, but it's also documented at the same time in a single document that's part of the city's documentation.
So just to get that down clearly, so you're saying add a 5th budget bullet point that says update climate action framework as needed and satisfy responsibilities as outlined in the climate.
Yeah, assigned to the Climate Action Committee in the framework. Yeah.
Okay. Carrie?
Thank you. I couldn't tell if I had my hand raised or not. I did with the screen share, so I see which is the issue you're having there. The one question I just wanted to clarify regarding City Council and the Planning Commission, Councilmember Gurney, was that for bullet 3 on duties of the CAC? Because I would not recommend that for 4 because that would be too long of a process and those bills will be either dead or passed by the time it gets to City Council if it needs to go through Planning Commission first.
Well, Carrie, I'm going to go with your wisdom and experience. If you think it's 3, then it's 3 and not 3 and 4.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is the Planning Commission is implementing the city's general plan and zoning ordinance with guidance. They're not an elected body that would get involved with higher level state and national. That's really the place of the City Council and the mayor.
True.
But for city policy and projects, absolutely, I think it makes sense.
I'm good.
All right. Go ahead, Joshua.
Yeah, I do like the stripped down list. And I think you've sort of clumped a few things together in the engage in public education and outreach bullet point there. One thing that sort of dropped off the list, which I don't know if it should disappear completely, is the research question, and not necessarily composition and duties of other cities' committees as stated. But for me, I feel that it's still on us to keep looking out at the larger world and doing research about things that people are trying elsewhere that might be applicable to the Sebastopol context. There's sort of this implication in the stripped down list that if we go through the framework and have our existing knowledge, that is enough to keep us going forward. But I feel like part of our obligation is to continue to look for other things that might be applicable here in that sort of research transferable models kind of lens. I don't know that necessarily merits a full-on bullet point, but for me, that's just a sense that is one of our duties, really, to keep looking.
Yeah, I mean, I really agree that that's part of, but to me, that is part of advising the City Council and recommending, like that's kind of inherent within doing a good job of doing any of the things on the list, especially if we're adding update the framework. I don't know if you guys can see, I did put the edited version based on today's feedback in the chat. Anyone else? I can't see any other hands up. And I don't know, would it be helpful if I shared my screen again with the revised version, or if you guys are comfortable with the revised version?
I think that would be good just to see it. I mean, is the, yeah, unless you're sure what you put in the chat is the completed one, because it seems like you're still making changes after you drop that.
Yeah, here. I think I'm choosing the right thing. Hold on. Yes. Can you guys see that? With the changes?
Yes.
Hannah, just one suggestion that maybe the last bullet point moves up to number 2, because it's sort of clumped with the other climate action framework action there.
How's that?
It's kind of funny today, later, I'm going to be talking about an international level climate goal. So, or, you know, climate action. So yeah, I mean, state, national, international, you can add it or not. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I think given the fact that our the work of committees like ours and of municipalities in general becomes much more important with the recent Supreme Court decisions, you know, we can have aspiration to advancing international climate goals for sure.
I was just going to point out one thing, Joshua's point about the research. I would expect that as we revise the framework over time, that's one of those things we should explicitly put in there in the framework, and then it would be assigned to us.
All right. So I'm not hearing any more specific edits. Is the group inclined to adopt these today? I'm getting a thumbs up. So do we need a motion there? I'm going to stop the share so I can see again.
I'll move it.
Okay.
Woody.
Thank you. All right. Do we have a second? Joshua seconds. Do we have further discussion from anyone on the committee about the motion that we adopt these, that we adopt these duties to recommend to City Council that's how we be described and understood? Debbie, I see your mic is on. Did you have something you wanted to say?
No, I just thought we were going to vote, and I'm always
okay. And any public comment on this item? All right, I think we're ready to vote on adopting this new list of duties as our recommendation to City Council for how the Climate Action Committee be defined. All in favor, please raise your virtual hands.
And Argus, if you wanted to raise your hand in the chat, yay or nay, that would work too. And we do have 9 participants with raised hands. And so that motion passes.
All right, thank you. Do I need to call for no votes if we've passed?
You can, and yeah, so Argus, if you're able to, in the chat, just let us know what your vote is. That would be great.
Thanks. All right, so thank you, everyone. And I want to acknowledge that RCPA is here for a 20-minute presentation about funding options. We do have an action item about reach codes on our agenda. I know there was a little bit of back and forth on that, but I would like to move the RCPA informational presentation up ahead of that reach code conversation so that we make sure we're able to fit that in. So RCPA, are you ready to move forward with your presentation?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for your time today, and I'm going to be have a lot of brevity here, but we'll try to get the message across. I'm going to share my screen if that's okay.
Please do. Are you finding yourself able to do that?
I am currently disabled from screen share.
Let me see if I can, or Carrie, I don't know if you're going to be faster than me at that.
Let me see. I think we got it. There we go.
Thank you.
There we go. Thank you very much. All right. Is that visible for everyone?
Yes.
You see the correct screen? Thank you for your time today. Like I said, I'm going to do the quick version. But basically, the purpose of our presentation today is to give an update on RCPA's work to mobilize the resources needed to support Sonoma County's ambitious climate goal of reaching carbon neutrality by 2030. No question that climate change is happening, much of it due to human activity. And no matter what part of Sonoma County you live and work in, the impacts of climate change are highly evident. Sonoma County was chosen as a White House Climate Action Champion in 2016. Our goal is to not be complacent in the face of these impacts and work towards making a positive difference in all communities of the county. We've continued our track record of setting bold goals for climate action. Most recently, we became the first county in the nation where all jurisdictions have adopted climate emergency resolutions and are working on solutions to address the climate crisis. RCPA is launching this call because we have a rather unique role in Sonoma County. We're the only agency of our kind in California created specifically to facilitate collaboration and coordination of climate efforts across Sonoma County. Through our work, we leverage resources, reduce duplication of efforts, coordinate plans, and we know that we can make progress faster when we work together. Our board of directors, which is the same as Sonoma County Transportation Authority, enables collaboration and accountability across the county. We have members from all 10 jurisdictions. Our oversight of programs ensures a balance of city and county perspectives. We have a number of other partners as well. And it's clear from recent events that climate change has impacted all of us in one way or another. And let's talk a little bit about how we can better prepare for and address these climate impacts here in Sonoma County. RCPA led development of Sonoma County's first countywide climate action plan published in 2016. We also want to acknowledge the climate work that this committee has been doing over the past year. We look forward to seeing the final version of the Sebastopol Climate Action Framework and working with you and the city on the next steps for that framework. This is kind of the, the flow here towards the future. And I think none of this will be news to you, but a comparison between Sonoma County's 2030 target of carbon neutrality and the state's target of carbon neutrality in 2045. And note that the 2030 carbon neutral goal assumes sequestration efforts offset remaining emissions to get to zero. We're also, RCPA is currently working on a 2020 GHG inventory update to be released later this summer, and that'll show how we did relative to the 2020 goal. Sonoma Climate Mobilization Strategies. We have 13 strategies and 4 initiative areas designed to achieve the 2030 goal. And I will go through these briefly since there are things that you are probably familiar with, but key to the Sonoma Climate Mobilization. So decarbonization, examples of this are, of course, all electric reach codes and researching policy options and incentives to accelerate the electrification of existing buildings. Decarbonization, the transportation part of that, shifting trips from driving to biking, walking, transit, and other forms of micromobility, and rapidly replacing gas-powered vehicles with electric vehicles. This also dovetails into SCTA's efforts. Zero waste, working to achieve the goal of zero waste by 2030, reduce reuse, recycle, composting to eliminate waste sent to landfills. And this is one where we're working with our partner Zero Waste Sonoma. Carbon sequestration and ecosystem services. Basically, we're looking to keep carbon in the ground, capture more carbon, and secure the resources needed to achieve these goals. And just noting that these climate solutions not only sequester carbon, but have additional benefits, of course, for the health of our community: heat reduction, improved air quality, more water retention, and improved soil health. Resilience and adaptation, increasing our resilience to climate change. We need to increase the resilience of our electrical grid, both to meet current needs and prepare for increased demands from electrification of our buildings and transportation systems, and to prepare for the many anticipated and current impacts of climate change. Equity and community engagement needs to be a fundamental part of how we develop and implement solutions to the climate crisis. SCTA and RCPA is developing an organization equity statement, which we have brought to our board to guide its work, and intends to partner closely with local community-based organizations and community members to ensure it receives inputs from a wide variety of stakeholders. Keys to success: what will it take to achieve our ambitious climate goals? Well, we very recently had a less recently, but on April 11th, a public workshop to kick off this effort. And we asked our attendees to share their vision for a climate-friendly future. And this is the word cloud that we created. And what resources are needed to achieve this vision? Well, funding, a trained workforce, creative thinking, new ways of solving problems. We want to work with existing local groups as a force multiplier rather than competing with similar climate goals. It's not something local government can do on its own. It's really going to use a cliche, take a village to respond to the climate crisis, and require us to fully engage the community to address this challenge. Next steps, basically our schedule moving forward. Given the need to act now, we're going to continue to work with our local partners to implement climate solutions. And we're going to use our community vision for 2030 to guide work later this year and next year to develop funding options and climate investment priorities. And by 2024, our goal is to have a clear plan on how we will secure additional funding for climate solutions. And a big part of that is the new funding for climate change structure. We've created this structure to support community-based efforts to engage climate experts, residents, and organizations in the development of recommendations to the RCPA board for an expenditure plan for potential climate revenue measure in 2024. So I'll be guided by the steering committee, and it's designed to provide an opportunity for interested community members to provide input on climate priorities and projects in the area they are most interested in. And we're finalizing the charter for this right now, and we'll begin recruiting volunteers in late August, early September. How can you get involved? Well, you can take our survey. Note that there's a Spanish version of the survey located on the first page. Join our mailing list, and of course, spread the word via social media. And finally, we're available to present to community groups and organizations. Please let us know if you have a group that you would like a member of our board or staff to present to. And thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. I know you have a packed agenda. Please let us know if you have any questions or comments.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you for your attendance today and for the presentation, and of course for the wonderful work you guys are doing. I am going to ask committee members that have feedback for RCPA to send that feedback via email to RCPA. So if you guys could please drop in the chat for this meeting an email address that people could send commentary to, that will allow us to move on with our agenda today. But again, thank you for your work and for being here and sharing that information. All right, so back to the reach code options. Jerry, I know that you have lots of knowledge on this. And I just want to clarify with you quickly, because you sent some new draft to me today, given our timing. Do you want to table until next meeting, or do you feel like you can summarize
Well, I can summarize those really fast. They're very simple. Joshua was concerned about parts versus chapters versus titles, and there was an error in the writing. I learned in the process. I contacted Carrie, and we were trying to figure out what do we call these things. In our municipal code, we have Title 15, which is the building code, and Title 17, which is the zoning code. And we have energy things and we have green building things in both those sections. The state of California has Title 24. Okay, so we have titles. Below Title 24 at the state level are parts. Part 6 is the building code. Part 11 is Cal Green, the energy code. In Sebastopol Municipal Code, as well as every other city's municipal code, it seems, in California, below titles, we have chapters. So we don't have parts. And that's where the confusion was in the document. I used the term part once, talking about Part 15, which actually should have said Title 15 of the Sebastopol Municipal Code. I changed the write-up so it says Sebastopol title such and such, California title such and such. And then after that, when I talk about the chapters, it says chapter 15 dot blah, 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 and which is already clarified because I only talk about 15 and 17. The Sebastopol Municipal Code stops at 17. So it doesn't go to 24 anyway. The second thing that I changed in the document was a clarification of what Steve and I are proposing is that we structure our municipal code so that we have clear ownership in Title 15 for energy and building and green building, and that things move there. But there was concern about how much labor's in that and how do we fit that into the budget? And the answer to that was brought up in the meeting, and I put it in the document. It says, establish those pieces, make the corrections that we need to make, and there's a couple of them that are identified there, and then progressively over time, our way of making any adjustment that we make when we change zoning or we change any other wording was we would populate those pieces with the appropriate parts. The changes, this was not a change to the original document. The things that do need to be addressed is we should drop the chapter that we have on our solar mandate because it's not enforceable. We should increase in the, put in the building code in the chapter that we recommended, that we adopt Cal Green and Tier 1, and then we do the filing so that that can be enforced. So those are the two major things that were there. I didn't change any wording on that. That was in the original wording. I would be in favor of tabling if staff would add their recommendation piece and write down the things that they supply to us verbally in the document. Because I think we owe it to the council that when we send a recommendation to them, a proposal to them, that they have all the material written down, and we've seen it. And so I was waiting for that to happen too. So I would be in favor of tabling, but the changes I made were pretty trivial. And thank you, Joshua. It took about 16 messages from Joshua before I finally understood why he was confused. I was explaining all kinds of things to him, and it was just one word in the document that was typed wrong.
So I believe at this point we're asking Carrie if tabling would be a realistic way in which we would get more input from staff on this.
I'm hoping so. I had asked Steve to fill that out, and I know everyone's been really busy, so I imagine you just didn't get to it. Jerry, did you follow up with him at all to ask?
I copied him. I didn't follow up with him on that. I copied him on that copy that I sent out. I thought he was working on it. So that's when you sent out the notes for the meeting, and I didn't see any changes to it when I jumped back into it.
Okay.
But one other thing I should point out is that I have not modified in the document the section recommending that we go to an all-electric reach code, because I expected that staff had their input on that. And I think that Steve Pierce also now agrees that it's probably not appropriate for us to have that. And I'd love for us to have the discussion in the committee, and then our recommendation would change so that we would take that out. But we'd have the discussion and we'd have it documented. As I pointed out in in an earlier message, it's the process I care about as much as the reach code.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So what I'm hearing is overall what I'm hearing is that we should table this, ask Steve Brown to fill out his work, and then everyone would have the benefit of the edited document to look at one more time, and then we could possibly have time to have a more robust discussion of the all electric versus not all electric.
Yeah, and Steve's gonna be pissed off at me because we're putting him on the spot, because I think if he does this well, he's going to establish a standard that everybody's going to follow.
All right. Okay, so we're going to table item C to a future meeting, and that will be Joshua will be developing the agenda for the next meeting. So we'll see if that's on it, but I'm guessing that will be a yes. Alex, do you have your information that you wanted to present about the bicycle event? Is Alex? There he is. Alex, there you go.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, it was more just a chair. Honestly, it's more just a chair report update. So I don't need any more than a few minutes. So I'm happy to move it along if anything else before.
No, go for it. We're ready.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Honestly, I wanted to make some time to kind of run it by you guys, or the Climate Action Committee. If we're gonna obviously not say sponsor, but if we're gonna set up some sort of bike riding event or kind of help facilitate getting it organized. I know there's a lot of avid bike folk, and I know Tor's is super involved, and so is Zeno. And so I know there's some other organizations that may just be more well positioned to set an event up. But originally it was Debbie's idea to kind of model something like the Taco Tuesday ride in Santa Rosa. Really the goal would be to set up a ride to help just bring community together and try to build some camaraderie and some community, and try to maybe potentially weave in some climate education or information, but really just trying to get people out on bikes and ride more. And we saw Santa Rosa modeled that really well. I don't really have anything else to share on that. I guess more just if we were to set something up, making sure that the Climate Action Committee is, good with that. I don't think I need a motion or anything, but correct me if I'm wrong. And then Debbie, if anybody else wants to jump in and add anything, feel free.
Alex, I don't know if you can see the hands that are up. Do you want me to call on people?
Sure, you can call on people.
Okay, Jerry?
Alex, thanks for bringing this up. And also, Zeno, with the discussion on class 1, class 2, class 3 bike lanes, I just wanted to point out that we had a survey that the city sent out recently about Highway 12 and then also Regal. And there was general confusion, and I was generally confused also, what was being asked of us about those things. I thought it was talking about, and Zeno, if I get it wrong, I believe it's class 3, where you have separated bike lanes from the roadway. And I think that the survey was asking us all, surveying, can we paint the roads and expand them a little bit, and probably would have answered all the questions differently. So part of this whole discussion on bicycles and bike lanes and bike paths has to be really, really explicit for those of us who are novices in the area to understand what we're actually giving an opinion on. So I think I gave the wrong opinion based on the way the questions were laid out.
Can I jump in for a second?
Go for it.
Is that okay? Can I? Okay. I think it would be just really quickly, it would be really great if anybody has an opportunity to do the Taco Tuesday ride in Santa Rosa, because, I had heard about it, and before I wanted to do it, before we formed this, I formed this idea. And Jerry, to speak to your concern about bike paths, Sebastopol is not the friendliest bike especially if you don't live in the downtown area. It's very hard to get in. But in Santa Rosa, the way that they do it is so well organized. They have lights. You'd have to go. They have people riding up and down. There must be 150 people doing it, and they have bikers riding up and down, and somebody with a microphone. And it is so safe. It is unbelievable. So your concern is well taken, but the way that this is organized, it's not really around the bike paths, and obviously we wouldn't be on Highway 12, but.
Yeah, my point wasn't the point about that particular event. My point is about how we address bikes and active transportation as well.
Gotcha.
Sarah?
I just want to check, did this group get the summary about the survey results? Jerry, if you didn't see that, I think I'll send it. Carrie, do you have it from Tony? The summary of the survey?
If you could send it, that would be great if you have it.
Okay, and then would you send it to this group for us so everyone here can read it?
Absolutely. It will be
okay.
posted to the website. I think they were trying to figure out the best place to put it.
Okay, yeah, I just think since Jerry was frustrated by the survey, it'd probably be helpful for him to see the questions and the pie charts with the answers and then the narrative summary of the answers.
But can I point something out, Sarah, just about the process of the fact that you had to ask, has the committee seen this? Has the task force that the committee has, which does transportation, seen this? And the answer is probably not.
Well, Jerry, I just got it like 2 days ago. So okay. I don't know what all of everybody gets because I'm not the micromanager who handles it all. No. I'm just wanting to make sure you see what you're confused about.
My point is a point that we've made before here in the committee, which is if we're going to play this role, then people have to recognize that we play the role and that the communication should go on to transportation.
Yes, and you should have this stuff. All right, so I raised my hand for another point, if I can get to that one. I just wanted to help Jerry really quickly.
Thank you.
Debbie, I'm not sure who does the Taco Tuesdays, but I'm hoping it's the Bicycle Coalition with the city of Santa Rosa. The Bicycle Coalition is working an event with the city of Petaluma this weekend, which is the Cyclovia. They've closed streets and are connecting Walnut Park to Lucchese Park. And the street is just going to have bicyclists, skaters, pedestrians. They're taking all the cars off for like a 4-hour period of time. And Eris Weaver at the Bicycle Coalition would love to do one of those in every city. So ever since I've learned about that, I've been trying to think of routes in town where we could do that if we avoid Caltrans roads. We have a great possibility of doing a community bicycle event. We earlier did one with the Bicycle Coalition to highlight the green bike lanes. And there's a great video of that event if anybody's interested. So I'm encouraging you, Alex, and the group to do something, and I'd be happy to help you.
Thank you. Lisa?
Yeah, I filled out that survey a while back, and I also wish that there had been something on there about separated bike paths versus bike lanes, especially on parts of Bodega, which are kind of gnarly for bikes. So anyway, if you didn't think to put additional comments about that, there really wasn't a spot to do it. So the results of the survey are going to be perhaps not what they could be because there was nothing about that option.
All right.
Yeah, and if I may, Lisa, I believe one of the, there is a practicality of Bodega Avenue bike lanes and the right-of-way width that we have somewhere, some places in town. I know there are, yes, while it would be great to have a grade separated or not grade separated, a separated bright lane. I do know that the engineering department was doing that for a very specific purpose related to the ATP grant, and there isn't room for that. So one of the things that I've always been taught with community participation is don't put an option out there that is not doable, because that can create a lot of public frustration when you get 100% votes that say, hey, we want this, but it's not actually physically possible. And so that's, that may be some of the background on why the questions were worded the way they were.
Yeah, it could be that the other streets, there's like Washington Ave or various other.
I'd like to refocus us. The survey was not on our agenda today. Happy to add it if people would like to have a discussion of that in this committee. I think it would be most helpful for that to go to the transportation working group to come forward to the full committee. But today was an informational presentation about the bike event.
Yes, thank you, Jenna.
Sorry. Poor Woody has been waiting for weeks and weeks and weeks to discuss, even in a few minutes, the fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty. So I see two hands up still, Deborah and Alex. Is there something important that you need to say about the event? Thank you so much. I love when hands go down.
I do want to ask something really quickly. Sorry. Maybe Carrie, you can answer this. Do we need to get City Council's approval to put on events, or what would our next step be if we, in the organizational structure of it?
Sure, I'm going to look to Sarah Gurney, who I see nodding her head yes, and I think that's Sarah, let you answer.
I think we want a city sponsorship. I mean, we want city council approval, city council buy-in, city insurance coverage, the whole thing, and you get that by officially asking.
Okay, thank you so much.
And I mean, I think it's a easy 5-0 vote too. Just to encourage you, all right? I have no idea how my colleagues will vote.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, Woody, bring it on.
Great. Okay, well, thank you. I'm gonna do everything here. I'm gonna drop the thing in the chat, and you got it in your packet. And I'm gonna share my screen too. Host disabled participant screen sharing. I would like to share my screen. I think one of the easiest, quick ways to, point to this would be to just sort of walk through the website for the treaty. So it looks like you just gave it to me, and boom, and boom, and so you should see it on your screen now. Yes. Okay, I see nodding heads there, so that's good. So this is maybe characterize it as a rare opportunity to participate in something at the international level. And I think I would say first that wow, why would there need to be a fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty when we've got the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, working this issue big time? I think there are a couple of reasons. One is that this focuses specifically on fossil fuels, coal, oil, and gas, whereas Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, focuses on a whole bunch of stuff. And in fact, in the 2015 Paris agreement, they actually didn't even mention fossil fuels, right? So there's this third rail kind of thing going on. So this concept here is modeled on the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and I don't want to get into a rabbit hole about the degree of success of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, but the concept is there, which is to have an international agreement that could be through the UN, or it could be sort of a freestanding treaty that comes to be, and there's an entire staff team working on that. And so there's, this is a pretty robust entity with a lot of staff people. I have a couple of contacts there on staff. I only became aware of this relatively recently, sometime late last year or early this year. And the thing I want to point to, and the purpose of it, if it's not clear, the purpose of it is stated right here briefly: an initiative to phase out fossil fuels and support a just transition by away from fossil fuels. So, that's the purpose. And who is endorsed? And this is where it talks about governmental entities, and in North America, it's a very short list. But we do have, in California, LA, Hayward, Richmond, Santa Ana. I'd kind of like to add Sebastopol to that list. So I imagine, this is something where I just wanted to make everybody aware of it, see if it's something that the committee wants to learn about a little bit, perhaps, and pursue. And if you do, if you would like to put this forward to the city council, I could put together a brief, statement about it or something that would describe, point to some of the reasons why a city should do this, how it may, lead to some material impact on actually, that it's not just symbolic, because I think that would be one of the first questions folks might hear is, how is this not symbolic? And so there is a team working on engaging with international bodies, the UN. In fact, I just got recent news that the UN agreed at their big Stockholm Plus 50. They had a meeting last year from one of their first meetings on climate, and they agreed that there must be and this was due to the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty team engaging with them, asking for them to pass a resolution stating that we need to phase out fossil fuels. So there are some things happening in the real world to address fossil fuels. So I see Jerry's hand up. I'm not surprised to see Jerry's hand up. So go ahead, Jerry.
Just this, and you started to say it, which was, is this just for show, or is it that mean that we do something? And we've already done half of the job, and half of the job was your initiative with no more gas stations. The other half of the job would obviously be all electric reach codes. So, the implication is if it's non-proliferation, then it would say our city should say, hey, no more gas is going to be added to our city. And what initiatives do we have to make that happen? So that's really the question.
Thank you. How I will speak to that is in the whole sort of oil, gas, and let's remember, this is focusing on coal, oil, and gas. Coal isn't in the equation for us. We get no power from coal in the state of California. It's not really, there are some issues, but anyway, it's about coal, oil, and gas. And there's two big sides of it. There's the demand side, which is really what you're talking about, and there's the supply side. And a big chunk of what this non-proliferation treaty would be about is getting an international agreement on managed decline of production, extraction of oil and gas and coal. And this is not an easy thing. It's getting an international agreement to leave trillions of dollars, in the ground, right? And so that's a big part of it. And so I'd answer you in that way to say, yeah, the local government stuff is super important, and the fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty people will say over and over again, local government super important. Keep doing the good things you're doing. With all of the lack of action at the federal level, not just in this country but others. Local governments, municipalities, subnational actors play a big role. So that's how I would answer that. Other questions, comments, concerns? Lisa?
I'd love to see Sebastopol on the list.
Oh, thank you.
So I think we could just ask for maybe people to do a thumbs up if they'd like you to bring that, go ahead and develop that list of.
I was thinking like a one-page thing that would just have the link to the non-proliferation treaty. Here are like 5 bullets of why a city, and they have that 5 bullets as to why a city should join, and it's for your consideration, City Council.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
I'm seeing enough thumbs up that I think is worth you moving that forward.
Okay, I'll bring that back to the next meeting.
Thank you. All right, so we are almost at time. I have not heard from any of the working groups that they have urgent reports other than the bike event. So start waving your arms if you feel something is really important. In terms of, and I think I didn't hear from Woody that there's an important legislative update this round.
No, you didn't, but I'll just say that bill, that the same one that I've been talking about from the beginning, SB 833, that provides state resources to local governments for energy resilience plans and deployments, still alive, still doing well. It's going to be in committee for a final vote this coming month. The legislation is on recess. And so in August, they'll vote on it. And there may be an outreach to cities to sign on. So it's going to be this thing where all of a sudden, can we quick get through, to the city council to send in a thumbs up for it. So I don't know how you want to handle that.
would we want to just move that forward with bringing, again, like that leaves two things for you to work up for next meeting, but
Okay, I can do that.
something that we could
Yep.
just be in place that's already gone to council. You know, we've already made that recommendation to council so that we're
Yes.
in a position to move.
I'll have it.
Great, thank you. In terms of chair reports, we do have an opportunity to table at the Gravenstein Apple Fair on August 13th and 14th. I am available to try to work that table. Would love to have other people join me and with both ideas and physical presence. So we'll be submitting our information for getting a table there within the next few days. And please email me if you're willing or able to join in all or part of that. We do have our council informational presentation on the 19th, which is next Tuesday. So, and also Phoebe will be presenting to the City Council the Climate Action Framework as recommended by us today. So lots of reasons for us to come to the City Council meeting next Tuesday. And then just a question has come up about whether this is the right time of day or day for these meetings. So sometime in the not too distant future, I'll probably be sending questions about maybe another survey about what times people that in the current membership are able and willing to attend meetings. And if you have strong opinions or you already know some availability, feel free to just email me those on the front end so I don't put a bunch of things that you can't do into the list of options. Debbie, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to tell you really quickly, we can talk about it offline, but on tabling, we made a checklist for everything for the tabling and have all kinds. So just don't start all over from the beginning. Okay, that's all.
Thank you. Joshua, did you have anything to add to the chair reports?
Nothing pertinent at this time. Thank you.
Okay, and if you have input regarding the next meeting agenda, I encourage you to email Joshua sooner than later, as he will be developing that over the next week. Carrie.
I just realized that I forgot one important thing, which I talked to Debbie about last night at the Planning Commission meeting, but the city manager has approved the request for the Climate Action Committee to have a column in the Sebastopol Times. And to keep it super, super simple, I volunteered to be responsible to be the review party. So it doesn't need to go through Holly or city manager or anyone like that. I said, I'll take responsibility if we put something in there somebody doesn't like, but so I'll need to just review it for appropriateness as a city committee, but otherwise you can speak as a city committee through that venue.
All right.
And I do want to thank the Education and Outreach Committee because they have been so looking for a lot of different ways. So thank you for continuing to try. I know as a city, we are limited in a lot of ways because of public record acts and the need to be open and fair and still understand that it's representing a larger city. So thank you so much for your perseverance. And I'm happy it sounds like we finally found a way that will work for everybody.
Wonderful, thank you. And hopefully we can discuss the column more in future meetings. Joshua, do you have a review of action items?
Yes. So just a heads up to everybody that the grant writer proposal is essentially going to happen. So a reminder to working groups to keep an eye out for projects you would like to fund or grants that you think might be applicable or even applicants for the grant writer position. Note that there is an RCPA call to action survey available online, which is probably worth reviewing and filling out. Similarly, check out results from the Sebastopol bike survey. Woody is on deck for updating items on the fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty and SB 833. Anybody who was willing to consider tabling at the Gravenstein Apple Fair should be in contact with Kenna. And please, everybody, consider showing up for at least part of the City Council meeting next Tuesday, where the committee and the framework will be represented. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for your time today. Sorry, we've gone 4 minutes over. I will adjourn this meeting until our next meeting of July 27th.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kenna.
Thank you all.
Hey, Kenna, stay on for a second.